You are not struggling because life is hard. You are struggling because you keep trying to control what was never yours to control. Every day you wake up and your mind immediately reaches for outcomes, approval, certainty and comfort. And every time reality refuses to obey, you feel tension that you then call stress. What is really happening is simpler and more direct. Your judgments are untrained and your attention is scattered across things outside your authority, while the only thing that belongs to you remains unattended. You are about to learn how to bring your mind back under reason, how to separate what you can govern from what you cannot, and how to stop letting automatic thoughts decide your reactions before you even notice them. This is not theory. It is the daily discipline of living with clarity when life becomes difficult and unpredictable. If you are willing to examine your own thinking without excuses, join this space and subscribe, not for motivation but for practice, for repetition, for the steady return to a mind that no longer abandons itself when pressure appears. Number 1. Accept reality without inner resistance. Look at your life as it is, not as you wish it were. That is where all serious philosophy begins, not in fantasy, not in complaint, not in the childish hope that reality will apologize to you and then rearrange itself around your preferences. Reality does not wait for your consent. It does not ask whether you are ready. It does not care how unfairly you think you have been treated. The world will hand you delay, loss, betrayal, pain, confusion, sickness, disappointment, and silence. It will do this without malice and without mercy. Your task is not to stop this from happening. Your task is to meet it without becoming smaller than you are. Most people suffer twice, once from the event itself, and once from their rebellion against the event. They add resistance to injury, and then they call the whole weight suffering. The first blow may not be chosen. The second almost always is. This is where a disciplined mind begins to separate fact from judgment, occurrence from opinion, what happened from what you are telling yourself about what happened. A door closes, a person leaves, a plan collapses, an opportunity vanishes. Your first impulse is to protest, to tense the body, to rehearse the offense, to ask why this must be happening to you. But the wiser question is simpler and harsher. What is this exactly, and what now belongs to me? When life gets hard, your instincts will try to drag you into panic. They will tell you to fight the unavoidable, to curse what has already arrived, to imagine that anger is strength. It is not. Anger is often only surrender wearing a loud mask. You cannot strike reality into obedience. You cannot shout a loss back into gain. You cannot hate your way into peace. The work is more exacting than that. You must first stop lying to yourself. You must say, without decoration, this has happened, not this should not have happened, not this is unbearable because it was not part of my plan. Simply, this has happened. In that sentence there is no weakness, there is clarity. Clarity is not coldness. Clarity is the beginning of freedom. A man who refuses to see what is before him becomes a prisoner of his own protest. He keeps arguing with the wall and wonders why he cannot walk through it. Acceptance does not mean approval. It does not mean that you call hardship good. It does not mean you pretend pain is pleasant or injustice is just. It means you refuse to waste your mind fighting what is already true. The event is here. The fact exists. Your dislike of it does not erase it. Your outrage does not alter it. Your resistance only divides your attention and weakens your capacity to act where action is still possible. There is a ruthless dignity in accepting what is outside your control. Most people think this makes them passive. It does the opposite. It gives them energy back. The mind that is no longer dragged into arguing with weather, history, other people's choices, and yesterday's losses becomes available for actual work. That work begins with judgment. You do not control what appears. You do control how you judge what appears. You do not control whether a person speaks harshly to you. You do control whether their words govern your character. You do not control whether your body weakens, whether your plans are delayed, whether your reputation is wounded, whether the market turns, whether the world grows loud and cruel. You do control whether you remain honest, restrained, courageous, and just. That is enough. It has always been enough. Do not insult yourself by asking for a life without hardship. Ask instead for the strength to remain uncorrupted by it. Hardship is not your enemy if it exposes what in you was weak, childish, dependent, and untrained. It reveals where you have mistaken comfort for virtue and convenience for wisdom. A soft life can hide a weak soul. Difficulty strips away the decorations. It shows whether your principles are real or merely spoken. It shows whether you can endure without becoming bitter, whether you can lose without collapsing, whether you can be blocked without becoming dishonest. This is why every hard season contains a test and a chance. The test is whether you will be ruled by appearances. The chance is whether you will finally begin to govern yourself. The undisciplined mind does not want this kind of honesty. It wants to remain excused. It wants to say that if life were fair, if people were better, if circumstances were kinder, then virtue would be easier. But virtue is not made for easy days alone. It is made for the whole of life. It is made for traffic, illness, rejection, humiliation, fatigue, and uncertainty. If your character only functions when conditions are favorable, then it is not character, it is convenience. A sailor is not proven by calm water. A runner is not proven while standing still. A mind is not proven while everything flatters it. It is proven when life presses upon it and it still refuses to break its own standards. Acceptance begins inside your own head, and it begins with the discipline of saying no to dramatic interpretation. The facts may be painful. Your mind does not need to decorate them with catastrophe. A mistake at work is not the end of your life. A period of loneliness is not proof that you are abandoned forever. A setback is not a prophecy. A difficult conversation is not a disaster. Your mind loves to enlarge one moment into a permanent fate. It does this because it wants certainty. And if it cannot have certainty, it chooses fear. Do not obey it. Train it. Tell it the truth. This is one event, not the universe. This is one trial, not your identity. This is one wound, not the definition of your existence. You must watch the first movement of your mind as carefully as a guard watches a gate. The first thought often arrives uninvited. This is unfair. This is too much. I cannot take this. I need this to stop now. Do not let that first movement become your command. Between the first impression and your response there is a space, and in that space your freedom lives. The entire art of self-mastery is contained there. You pause, you ask what is happening. You ask what belongs to you. You ask what the proper response is, not what the emotional impulse is. This small delay may seem insignificant, but it is the difference between a rational life and a reactive one. If you have been living as though your emotions must be obeyed simply because they are strong, you have been living like a servant of impulses. Strength is not intensity. Strength is obedience to reason. It is the ability to remain aligned with what is right even when the body is afraid, the mind is agitated, and the ego is offended. When life gets hard, the body will tighten, the chest will narrow, the thoughts will scatter. This is normal. What matters is whether you let that internal storm decide your conduct, your breath, your posture, your speech, your next choice. These remain within reach. Use them. Stand still long enough to remember that you are not your panic. Many people think acceptance means surrendering the right to struggle. That is another confusion. You may resist in the sense of working, enduring, and acting. You must not resist in the sense of denying reality. There is a world of difference. You can take medicine while accepting sickness. You can seek justice while accepting that injustice exists. You can make a new plan while accepting that the old one has failed. You can leave what is harmful while accepting that you cannot force another person to change. Acceptance is not retreat, it is accurate sight. Once you see clearly, you can act without waste. Without acceptance, your actions are contaminated by denial and resentment. With acceptance, your actions become clean. There is a practical exercise for this, and it should be done without drama. When something difficult happens, do not ask first, "Why me?" Ask, "What exactly is under my control here?" Write it down if you must. Put one list in front of you. What is not up to me? What is up to me? On the first side, place other people's opinions, the past, chance, the speed of events, the behavior of the world, the fact of mortality, the weather of fortune. On the second side, place your judgments, your words, your choices, your honesty, your restraint, your courage, your willingness to do your duty now. Most suffering grows in the gap between these two categories. Most peace begins when you stop trying to seize the first and start governing the second. Do this often enough, and you will discover how much of your misery came from a failed attempt to control what was never yours. You were angry because someone did not behave as you wanted. You were bitter because outcomes did not match your preference. You were exhausted because you kept mentally rehearsing a world that was never going to happen. This is not noble suffering. It is wasted energy. To accept reality without inner resistance is to stop pouring your life into an impossible task. The task is not to bend the world to your mood. The task is to make your mind worthy of any world it is placed in. There will be days when hardship comes in ordinary clothing. It will not arrive as tragedy. It will arrive as inconvenience, irritation, delay, a rude message, a missed call, a small humiliation, a plan that fails in private. These moments matter because they show whether your philosophy is alive or decorative. It is easy to speak of endurance in grand terms. It is harder to remain calm when the coffee spills, the meeting turns awkward, the person you relied on disappoints you, or the task you wanted to finish is interrupted for the third time. This is where you train. This is where acceptance becomes real, not in speeches, in interruptions, in the unglamorous places where your reaction reveals your character before your mouth has time to pretend otherwise. If you cannot accept a small hardship, you will not be able to accept a larger one. The mind trains by repetition. Every irritation is an opportunity to refuse immediate protest. Every delay is a chance to practice patience. Every disappointment is a chance to tell the truth without drama. You are not waiting for a harder life to begin living seriously. Your life as it is now is enough to expose your weakness and enough to build your strength. The small trials matter because they prepare you for the greater ones and because they form your habits. A man does not suddenly become calm in catastrophe if he has spent years feeding his temper over trivial things. Another exercise. Begin the day by imagining that some things will go against you. Not as a way of becoming fearful, but as a way of becoming prepared. The purpose is not to invite anxiety. The purpose is to remove shock. When hardship is expected as part of the fabric of life, it loses some of its power to humiliate you. You stop acting as though inconvenience is an insult. You stop treating difficulty as a personal betrayal. You understand that a human life includes friction by nature, and that your job is not to escape friction entirely, but to meet it well. Then, when the thing arrives, you are less likely to crumble because your mind has already rehearsed the truth that life does not exist to obey your comfort. Acceptance also requires you to surrender the fantasy that suffering is always avoidable if you are wise enough. This fantasy is common, and it is dangerous. It tells you that if you make the perfect choice, you will never be shaken. It implies that pain is a sign of failure, and that hardship means you missed some hidden rule. This is not wisdom, It is an attempt to protect the ego from the human condition. Pain is not always a verdict. Sometimes it is simply the price of being alive in a world that moves, breaks, changes, and ends. When you stop treating pain as an anomaly and begin treating it as part of nature, you are less surprised and more prepared. Nature does not promise ease, it promises change. Things rise, decline, and disappear. People come, people go. Your body ages, your circumstances shift. Today's certainty becomes tomorrow's memory. To accept reality without inner resistance is to align yourself with this order rather than argue with it. You are not being asked to love loss. You are being asked to cease pretending you are entitled to permanence. Everything that can be taken from you was never yours in the deepest sense. It was entrusted to you for a time. Your duty is to use it well while it is here, and to release it without collapse when it is gone. That release is not emotionless. You may grieve, you may feel the ache, you may stand in silence and know the pain. Stoic acceptance is not denial of feeling, it is refusal to become enslaved by feeling. There is a difference between knowing sorrow and being ruled by sorrow. There is a difference between acknowledging fear and obeying fear. There is a difference between saying, "This hurts," and saying, "Because this hurts, I am allowed to lose my composure and abandon reason." You are not allowed. Not if you intend to live well. Not if you intend to be free. Reason is not the enemy of your humanity. It is the highest expression of it. When life gets hard, the temptation is to become needy for reassurance. You want someone to tell you it will be fine, that the pain will pass quickly, that nothing important is really at stake. But the wise mind does not build itself on soothing lies, it builds itself on truth. The truth is that hardship may last longer than you want. The truth is that some things may not return. The truth is that you may be required to endure without immediate comfort. But the truth is also that your moral center is still available. No one can steal your capacity for honesty, restraint, courage, and justice unless you hand it over. This is your fortress. Keep it. Do not confuse acceptance with resignation. Resignation says, "Nothing can be done." Acceptance says, "I know what is real, and now I will do what belongs to me." When a situation can be improved, improve it. When a duty must be performed, perform it. When a wrong must be corrected, correct it if it lies within your power. But do not poison your action with fantasies about total control. A man who accepts reality is steadier in action because he is not at war with the limits of existence. He does not waste half his life pretending the limits are not there. He uses the half that remains. A practical discipline for hard days is this: speak less, examine more. The moment people are hurt, frustrated, or afraid, they often start talking excessively. They explain, accuse, justify, and repeat themselves. This talk can become a way of avoiding reality. Silence, by contrast, forces a confrontation. Sit with what is true. Ask what the event demands. Ask what virtue requires. Ask what would be cowardly here, what would be excessive, what would be dishonest. Then act. Do not use noise to flee yourself. The soul that can endure silence can endure difficulty with more dignity than the soul that constantly needs to discharge its discomfort into the air. Another discipline: separate the event from the story you have invented around it. The event may be a lost job. The story may be, "I am ruined, I am behind, I will never recover, I am being humiliated, my future is gone." The event may be a criticism. The story may be, "I am worthless, everyone sees my flaws, I am exposed." The event may be solitude. The story may be, "I am unloved, I do not matter, I have been abandoned." Notice the difference. One is fact, the other is interpretation. You cannot always stop the fact. You can always examine the interpretation. and often the suffering lives more in the interpretation than in the fact itself. This examination must be merciless in the best sense. Do not flatter your own fear. Do not call your avoidance prudence. Do not call your bitterness justice. Do not call your passivity patience. Name things correctly. If you are procrastinating because you are afraid, say so. If you are clinging to resentment because it feels powerful, say so. If you are resisting acceptance because part of you wants to stay offended, say so. Such honesty is painful, but it clears the air. False self-respect is a trap. Real self-respect begins when you can look directly at your own weakness without immediately defending it. Life will keep giving you chances to practice this. The relationship that ends is a chance. The body that ages is a chance. The plan that fails is a chance. The argument that strips away your composure is a chance. The insult that burns your pride is a chance. Each one asks the same question: will you remain governed by what is outside you, or will you return to the place of command within? This return is not mystical, it is practical. Breathe, name the fact, identify what is yours. Refuse the fantasy of control over what is not. Choose the response that preserves your character. Repeat. There is no shame in hardship. There is shame only in being made smaller by it. The fire does not disgrace the metal it tests. The metal is strengthened by enduring the fire correctly. So too with the soul. Difficulty can leave you raw and resentful, or it can leave you deeper, cleaner, and more capable. The difference is not the event. The difference is your response. This is why the wise do not beg life to be easy. They ask to be equal to what life brings. They seek not less strain, but more steadiness. Not a path without difficulty, but a mind that does not collapse under difficulty. When you accept reality without inner resistance, you stop demanding that the world become your teacher's assistant. Life is not there to flatter your expectations. It is there to reveal your character. Every unexpected event is a summons. Show me what you are made of. Will you complain, or will you think? Will you lash out, or will you govern yourself? Will you cling to your first impression, or will you test it? Will you waste the day on protest, or will you do the next right thing with a clear mind? These are the questions that matter, not the questions of comfort, the questions of character. You may be tempted, even after hearing all this, to seek a formula that will make pain disappear. There is no such formula. There is only discipline. The disciplined mind knows how to receive hardship without immediate rebellion. It knows how to endure without self-pity. It knows how to act without needing perfect conditions. It knows how to keep faith with virtue when applause is absent and when relief is delayed. This is not glamorous work. It is the work of becoming a person who can be trusted by himself. And that trust is worth more than easy pleasure, more than approval, more than the fragile peace of a life built on avoiding reality. So begin where you are. This morning, before the world starts pulling at you, sit in stillness for a few moments and name what may go wrong. Not to frighten yourself, but to strip away entitlement. Tell yourself that people may disappoint you, tasks may become difficult, your mood may falter, your plans may be interrupted, and that none of this gives you permission to lose your mind. Then tell yourself what remains yours: to speak honestly, to work carefully, to endure without complaint, to judge rightly, to stay just, to keep your attention on what is before you. That is a strong beginning. When something goes wrong during the day, pause before you react. Do not answer from the first heat of emotion. Do not type the message. Do not throw the words. Do not tighten the jaw and call it strength. Stand still if only for a breath. Ask whether the thing before you is within your control. If it is not, release the demand that it be different. If it is, act without drama. This is the whole practice in miniature, the pause, the judgment, the choice, over and over again. This is how a human being stops being dragged by every gust of circumstance and begins to stand upright. At night, examine your resistance. Where did you object to reality unnecessarily? Where did you make a situation heavier by demanding that it be different before you would face it? Where did you let your mind wander into complaint, fear, or self-pity? Do not use this examination to punish yourself. Use it to see clearly. The point is not guilt. The point is progress. Tomorrow you will be tested again, and you will need a cleaner mind than today's. The evening review is a way of scrubbing away the dust before it settles into habit. If you practice this long enough, you will notice something quietly radical. The hard things will still happen, but they will no longer automatically own you. The world will remain imperfect, but your inner response will become more exact. You will feel less need to protest what is inevitable. You will stop spending so much life trying to purchase peace through control. You will discover that peace is not bought from the world. It is earned within yourself through proper judgment, disciplined desire, and the willingness to say yes to reality as it is, while still acting honorably within it. This is not a small thing. To accept reality without inner resistance is to stop treating life as an enemy and start treating it as a field for virtue. It is to meet the day without self-deception. It is to stand in the presence of difficulty and remain a rational being. It is to cease begging for a softer world and begin building a stronger mind. That mind is not hardened into stone. It is alive, alert, and obedient to reason. It does not collapse when disappointed. It does not become cruel when hurt. It does not become cowardly when afraid. It holds its shape. Nothing in your life becomes easier because you refuse to see it. Everything becomes more manageable when you see it plainly. That is the first victory, not triumph over the world, but triumph over the urge to lie to yourself about the world. Then, from that honest place, do the work. Endure what must be endured. Correct what can be corrected. Release what cannot be held. Refuse to become contemptible in the name of comfort. Let hardship teach you where you are weak, and let your response prove that weakness is not the last word. You do not need a new life to begin this. You need a new relation to the life you already have. Stop wrestling with what has already been decided. Stop throwing your mind against the wall of reality. Stop demanding that the world apologize before you can be decent. Be decent now. Be rational now. Be courageous now. Be just now. Accept what is here, and from that acceptance build the only kind of strength that cannot be taken from you. This is the beginning of freedom. Not the freedom to avoid pain, but the freedom to remain honorable inside it. Not the freedom to command fate, but the freedom to command yourself. Do not delay this work. Every day you postpone it, you pay for it with agitation, confusion, and wasted life. Every day you practice it, you become harder to break and clearer to lead yourself. Let reality be reality. Let your mind be your own. Let virtue be the thing you refuse to surrender. Then whatever comes, you will not merely survive it. You will meet it as a disciplined human being, and that is a life worth living. Number 2, master your mind, not circumstances. Your greatest struggle has never been against difficult people, uncertain events, or changing circumstances. It has always been against an untrained mind that mistakes every passing impression for truth. You wake each morning believing the day will be determined by what happens around you, yet before the world has spoken a single word, your own judgments have already begun shaping your experience. The moment something does not unfold according to your preference, your thoughts rush forward to declare that something terrible has happened. Before reality has had time to reveal itself, your mind has already delivered its verdict. This is why so many people remain exhausted even when nothing extraordinary has happened. They imagine that the source of their unrest lives outside them. They blame demanding work, difficult relationships, uncertain finances, or unpredictable fortune. Yet place another person in those same conditions and you may find calm where you expected despair. The difference is not found in the circumstances, it is found in the government of the mind. One person has surrendered authority over his inner life. The other has learned that no event possesses the power to command his judgment unless he grants it permission. The first task of a disciplined life is to understand this distinction with complete seriousness. Your thoughts arrive quickly, but they do not arrive with authority. They are visitors, not rulers. Every impression knocks upon the door of your reason, asking to be admitted. Most people never question these visitors. Fear enters and they obey. Anger enters and they obey. Envy enters and they obey. Pride enters and they obey. They imagine that because a thought appeared, it deserves belief. This is the beginning of slavery. You must become far more demanding with your own mind than you have ever been before. Every judgment deserves examination before it is accepted. Every conclusion deserves testing before it governs your actions. A disciplined person does not ask whether a thought feels convincing. He asks whether it is true. These are not the same question. Feelings are often loud. Truth is often quiet. Feelings demand immediate action. Truth asks for careful attention. If you continue treating every emotional impulse as reliable guidance, your days will never belong to reason. They will belong to whatever emotion happened to arrive first. Notice how quickly the mind creates unnecessary suffering. Someone fails to answer your message. Before any facts appear, your thoughts invent rejection. A mistake is discovered at work. Before correcting it, your imagination predicts humiliation. A plan changes unexpectedly. Instead of adapting, the mind announces that the entire day has been ruined. None of these conclusions existed in reality. They were manufactured within. You did not suffer because events forced you to. You suffered because you accepted an interpretation without investigation. This habit has been strengthened through years of repetition. Every complaint accepted without examination makes the next complaint easier. Every fearful prediction believed without evidence trains the mind to expect disaster. Every excuse repeated to yourself becomes another chain around your character. Habits of thought eventually become habits of life. Long before actions are visible, they have already been rehearsed silently within the mind. The person who wishes to become free must therefore begin where every action begins, with attention. Throughout the day, observe the movement of your own thinking. Do not watch other people first. Watch yourself. Listen carefully to the conversations taking place inside your own mind. How often do you exaggerate inconvenience? How often do you assume the worst before evidence exists? How often do you defend your comfort instead of your principles? These silent conversations shape your conduct more than any speech you give to the world. You cannot master yourself while remaining unaware of yourself. Awareness is not passive observation. It is disciplined vigilance. Stand guard over your judgments the way a careful watchman guards a city gate. Not every visitor deserves entrance. Some thoughts promise protection while bringing disorder. Others promise pleasure while weakening character. If they are admitted without question, they slowly establish themselves as permanent residents until you begin calling them your personality. Yet they were only habits that escaped examination. A powerful discipline begins before the demands of the day have scattered your attention. Rise each morning a few moments earlier than necessary. Sit quietly without distraction. Before reaching for conversation, news, or entertainment, examine the condition of your own mind. Ask yourself what qualities you intend to protect today. Resolve that honesty will not be exchanged for convenience. Decide that patience will not disappear because someone behaves poorly. Determine that your peace will not depend upon praise or favorable outcomes. By making these decisions before circumstances arrive, you strengthen reason before emotion begins its arguments. This morning, discipline is not about predicting every difficulty. It is about remembering who is responsible for your conduct, regardless of difficulty. You prepare your character before testing begins. Just as a craftsman sharpens his tools before beginning his work, you sharpen your judgment before entering the world. Without preparation, your attention is easily stolen. With preparation, you carry an inner standard that remains available whenever confusion appears. As the day unfolds, another practice becomes essential. Whenever emotion rises strongly within you, refuse immediate agreement. Delay your judgment. Ask yourself one simple question: what exactly has happened? Separate observable facts from the story your mind has added. The facts are often much smaller than the emotional narrative built around them. A conversation ended awkwardly. A task took longer than expected. Someone disagreed with your opinion. These are facts. Everything beyond them requires examination before belief. This brief pause is one of the greatest expressions of inner strength. Many people believe strength consists of reacting immediately, speaking first, defending themselves without hesitation, yet the person who cannot pause has already surrendered command of himself. Speed is not mastery. Deliberate judgment is mastery. Every moment you choose reflection over impulse, you strengthen the governing part of your mind. There is another trap that quietly weakens countless lives. People become attached, not merely to goals, but to specific outcomes they cannot guarantee. They decide in advance exactly how events must unfold before they will permit themselves peace. When reality refuses these demands, resentment follows. Yet no amount of wishing has ever placed the future under human control. Your responsibility lies entirely elsewhere. Your responsibility is to bring excellence to your choices, not certainty to your results. Consider how much unnecessary anxiety disappears when this truth is accepted completely. You can prepare carefully without demanding success. You can work diligently without insisting upon recognition. You can love sincerely without attempting to govern another person's heart. You can act courageously while accepting that outcomes remain uncertain. Once you stop measuring yourself by events beyond your authority, your effort becomes cleaner, steadier, and free from constant agitation. The disciplined mind returns repeatedly to one question throughout the day: what belongs to me? Not possessions, not reputation, not comfort. What belongs to you are your choices, your integrity, your attention, your willingness to act according to reason. Everything else moves according to causes greater than your personal preference. When you remember this distinction, you stop scattering your strength across things that cannot be possessed. Much of modern restlessness comes from living outward instead of inward. Attention is constantly pulled toward comparison, recognition, approval, and endless distraction. The mind becomes accustomed to chasing stimulation while neglecting examination. Yet no amount of external movement can compensate for internal disorder. A busy life is not necessarily a disciplined life. Activity without self-government often becomes another form of escape. You must become comfortable sitting quietly with your own thoughts, not to indulge them, but to inspect them. Ask yourself whether your recent frustrations have truly been caused by circumstances or by expectations that reality never promised to fulfill. Ask whether your anger protected your character or merely exposed your lack of discipline. Ask whether your fears were warnings from reason or inventions born from imagination. Honest answers may wound your pride, but they strengthen your soul. Do not fear discovering weakness within yourself. Fear remaining unaware of it. Hidden faults quietly govern a person's life for years because they are never brought into the light of examination. The moment they are clearly seen, they begin losing their authority. Self-deception survives only in darkness. Truth removes its disguise. There will be moments when your training appears to fail. Emotion may rise before reason speaks. Old habits may briefly reclaim familiar ground. Do not interpret these moments as defeat. Treat them as instruction. Every lapse reveals another place requiring attention. Instead of condemning yourself, return immediately to discipline. Correct the judgment. Restore your attention. Continue the work. Progress belongs to those who resume practice without delay. Each evening, before sleep claims the day, conduct a careful review. Do not ask whether the day was pleasant. Ask whether your mind remained governed by reason. Recall moments when irritation appeared. Did you examine it before speaking? Recall moments when fear entered. Did you investigate it before believing it? Recall moments when praise or criticism influenced your mood. Did you remember that your character carries greater weight than public opinion? This nightly examination transforms ordinary days into continuous education. Never perform this review with cruelty toward yourself. Harshness often disguises wounded pride. Instead, judge yourself with fairness and precision. Praise what was governed well. Correct what was governed poorly. End the day wiser than you began it. Small improvements repeated consistently shape a character capable of meeting far greater challenges. Remember that the purpose of mastering your mind is not emotional numbness. The disciplined person still feels disappointment, affection, concern, and grief. What changes is not the presence of emotion, but its authority. Emotion becomes information rather than command. Reason remains the final judge. This preserves both humanity and freedom. You will eventually discover something remarkable. Circumstances continue changing exactly as before. Success alternates with failure. Praise alternates with criticism. Gain alternates with loss. Yet your inner life no longer rises and falls with every change. Stability begins replacing constant reaction. Decisions become clearer because they are no longer clouded by every passing impulse. Relationships improve because you respond thoughtfully rather than emotionally. Difficult work becomes manageable because attention remains fixed on present duty instead of imagined outcomes. This is genuine strength, not the ability to control the world, but the refusal to let the world govern the quality of your character. A disciplined mind cannot prevent hardship, yet it prevents hardship from becoming corruption. It cannot guarantee comfort, yet it protects integrity. It cannot remove uncertainty, yet it teaches you how to remain steady while uncertainty unfolds. Carry this understanding into every ordinary moment of your life. When frustration appears, examine it. When praise flatters you, examine it. When fear whispers confidently, examine it. When comfort tempts you away from duty, examine it. The quality of your life will never rise above the quality of your judgments. Every examined judgment strengthens freedom. Every unexamined judgment strengthens bondage. The world will continue offering endless reasons to surrender your attention. Do not hand it over so easily. Guard your reason with quiet determination. Govern your thoughts before they become words. Govern your words before they become actions. Govern your actions before they become habits. Govern your habits before they become your destiny. Master your mind first. Then allow circumstances to do whatever they will. A disciplined soul remains faithful to reason whether fortune smiles or withdraws. That is the only victory that cannot be taken away, because it depends upon no event outside yourself. Once you understand this completely, you stop chasing control over the world and begin exercising authority where it has always belonged, within your own judgment, your own choices, and your own character. Number 3. Hardship reveals true character. Hardship does not come to ruin a good person. It comes to reveal him. That is the first truth the weak mind resists. and the disciplined mind welcomes. When life is smooth, many people can imitate composure. They can sound reasonable when nothing presses upon them. They can speak of patience when their desires are already satisfied. They can praise integrity when it costs them nothing. But when the pressure arrives, when the plans fail, when the body aches, when the insult lands, when the waiting grows long, when the loss becomes real, then the hidden shape of the soul begins to show itself. What was only spoken becomes visible. What was only admired becomes tested. What was only assumed becomes proven or exposed. Do not insult yourself by imagining that hardship is an interruption to your life. It is part of the examination of your life. A man does not discover what he is made of in comfort. He discovers it under strain. A vessel appears useful until weight is placed inside it. A foundation seems strong until the storm comes. Your own character is no different. The event itself is not the main question. The question is what the event awakens in you. Does difficulty make you vain, bitter, frantic, and small? Or does it call forth steadiness, restraint, courage, and self-command? The answer is not hidden in theory. It is written in your reactions. This is why hardship is such a severe teacher. It does not flatter. It removes pretenses. It strips away the language people use to conceal their habits from themselves. Under pressure, you discover whether your mind has been trained or merely decorated. You discover whether you have been living by principle or by convenience. You discover whether your judgments are ruled by reason or by whatever feeling happened to arrive first. Most people do not truly know themselves because they avoid conditions that would reveal themselves. They seek comfort not only because comfort feels pleasant, but because comfort protects them from the mirror of difficulty. Yet the wise person does not flee the mirror. He stands before it. He accepts that a hard season may be the very thing that shows him the weakness he needed to see. This is not cruelty. This is usefulness. If your hand is injured and you do not look at the wound, you cannot treat it. If your thinking is infected and you refuse to examine it, the infection spreads. Hardship has a way of making hidden flaws impossible to ignore. It exposes impatience, dependence, vanity, resentment, fear, and self-pity. These are painful discoveries, but pain is preferable to blindness. The soul that can face its own condition has already begun to heal. When trouble enters your life, the first movement of the untrained mind is often accusation. It points outward immediately. Someone caused this. Something should not have happened. Life has been unfair. The mind wants to preserve its comfort by finding a target for its discomfort. But this habit only delays understanding. The wiser beginning is to ask not who to blame first, but what this event is showing me about myself. What did I expect from life that was never promised? What am I demanding from circumstances that no human being can guarantee? What judgment have I accepted without checking it? What fear has been quietly governing me while I called it prudence? A hard event is not only an obstacle, it is information. It tells you where your attachments live. If your peace collapses when recognition disappears, then recognition was ruling you. If your mood depends on favorable outcomes, then outcomes were ruling you. If your speech becomes unkind the moment you are frustrated, then your temper was never disciplined. If you are crushed by delay, then you have mistaken impatience for urgency. Every strain reveals a hidden dependency. Every dependency that you do not acknowledge becomes a chain. That is why hardship is valuable. It makes the chains visible. The mind that wishes to grow must learn to welcome honest exposure. Not because exposure feels good, but because it tells the truth. There is no progress in self-deception. There is no nobility in refusing to see oneself clearly. If you are weak in one area, call it weakness. If you are ruled by appetite, call it appetite. If you are terrified of being judged, call it fear of judgment. If you are addicted to approval, admit it. Naming a thing correctly is the beginning of mastery over it. What remains vague remains powerful. What is seen clearly can be addressed. Each morning, before the world begins tugging at your attention, remind yourself that the day may bring discomfort. Do not do this as a gloomy ritual. Do it as preparation. Tell yourself that someone may misunderstand you, that work may demand more than you feel ready to give, that plans may fail, that your body may feel heavy, that the news may irritate you, that another person may act without wisdom. Do not dramatize these possibilities. Simply admit that they are part of life. Then decide in advance that none of them will grant you permission to abandon reason. This quiet preparation strengthens the mind before the first blow lands. When hardship arrives, pause before you interpret it. Most suffering becomes larger because the first impression is allowed to become final. You feel the shock, and immediately the mind begins writing a disaster story. Stop there. Separate the raw event from the judgment you have attached to it. The event may be a difficult conversation. Your judgment may be, "This proves I am unworthy." The event may be a financial setback. Your judgment may be, "I am being destroyed." The event may be loneliness. Your judgment may be, "I will never recover." These additions are not facts. They are inner speeches. They can be examined. They can be rejected. They can be replaced with better judgment. This is the work that turns hardship from poison into training. Instead of asking whether you feel ready, ask whether your response is fit for a rational being. Instead of asking whether the situation is pleasant, ask whether you are remaining just, disciplined, courageous, and truthful within it. A painful situation does not excuse dishonorable conduct. A disappointing situation does not excuse self-abandonment. A humiliating moment does not excuse lying to yourself or mistreating others. Your circumstances may be severe. Your conduct must still be governed. Many people think strength means never being shaken. That is childish fantasy. Human beings are shaken. Bodies recoil. Thoughts race. Pride stings. Fear rises. The difference between the disciplined person and the undisciplined one is not that one feels nothing. It is that one does not hand over the steering wheel to what he feels. He notices the internal storm and keeps his command. He speaks more slowly. He thinks more carefully. He refuses to let a passing impression dictate a lasting decision. This is strength in its proper form. It is not loud. It is not theatrical. It is firm, patient, and exact. Hardship also teaches you whether your standards are real. It is easy to value virtue when nothing demands sacrifice. It is easy to praise honesty when honesty is convenient. It is easy to support discipline when no desire is pressing against it. But hardship is where virtue becomes visible. When you are tired and still do what is right, character appears. When you are misunderstood and still remain fair, character appears. When you are frustrated and still refuse cruelty, character appears. When you lose something and still preserve your dignity, character appears. The event does not create the virtue. It reveals whether the virtue was there. A person who has never tested his character should not be too confident in it. Many believe they are calm until life gives them a reason not to be. Many believe they are generous until scarcity arrives. Many believe they are patient until they are delayed. Many believe they are principled until principle becomes expensive. This is not reason for despair, it is reason for honest training. A beginning student is not condemned because he cannot yet perform as a master. He is simply required to practice with sincerity. So too with the soul. Begin where you are. Stop pretending. Start observing. Let difficulty teach you where your practice is incomplete. There is a powerful exercise for hard times. When you are troubled, ask yourself what in the situation depends on you. Then ask what does not. The other person's mood does not. The speed of events does not. The past does not. The final outcome does not. Your judgment, your choice, your restraint, your honesty, your perseverance, your willingness to remain just. These do. Hold only what is yours, release the rest. Much suffering comes from trying to carry what was never assigned to you. Once you stop demanding control over the uncontrollable, your energy becomes available for the work of character. Another exercise is voluntary discomfort. Do not wait for hardship to surprise you before you learn endurance. Practice small inconveniences deliberately. Leave some comfort unclaimed from time to time. Let the body learn that it can be denied without collapse. Let the mind learn that it does not need every desire fulfilled immediately. The purpose is not punishment. The purpose is freedom. A person who has never practiced restraint will be shocked by restraint. A person who has learned to endure small roughness with composure will meet larger hardship with less fear. This is how strength is built before the crisis, not after it. At night, examine how hardship affected you. Did it make you more honest or more theatrical? Did it make you more thoughtful or more reactive? Did it reveal a hidden weakness you were too proud to admit? Did you complain where you should have accepted or defend your pride where you should have corrected your conduct? Do not use this review to shame yourself into paralysis. Use it to understand your own pattern. The purpose of examination is better judgment tomorrow. If you see a flaw clearly and still refuse to address it, then you have chosen ignorance. If you see it and return to practice, then even your failure becomes useful. Never imagine that hard days are evidence that philosophy has failed. They are evidence that philosophy is needed. A life without resistance would not train the soul. It would leave it untested, unshaped, unproven. The point is not to create a life without pressure. The point is to become the kind of person who remains upright under pressure. This is a far more serious ambition. It requires patience with yourself and severity toward your excuses. It requires the courage to say that your moods are not sacred, your impulses are not authoritative, and your fear is not a valid ruler. Hardship reveals true character because it removes the mask. It shows whether you live by appearances or by principle. It shows whether your mind is a servant of reason or a servant of comfort. It shows whether you can accept a wound without turning it into bitterness, a setback without turning it into self-pity, an insult without turning it into revenge. Every time you answer difficulty with dignity, you strengthen the part of you that is fit to lead your life. Every time you answer it with complaint, you strengthen the part of you that prefers weakness. Do not wait for perfect conditions to begin this work. The conditions are already perfect for training because they are the conditions you actually have. The only life available to you is the one in front of you now. The only mind you can govern is the one you have now. The only character you can form is the one being formed now. Stop demanding a different stage before you perform. Life has given you exactly the materials needed to reveal and refine your soul. The question is whether you will use them wisely. So when hardship comes again, and it will, do not greet it as an enemy that has broken into your life. Greet it as a test that will show you what you have been building all along. Stand still long enough to see the impression clearly. Separate fact from fear. Separate what is yours from what is not. Choose the response that preserves your reason. Do not beg for the lesson to be easier. Ask only that you become more truthful, more disciplined, and more steady through it. That is the proper prayer of a serious mind. The world will continue to strike at your expectations. Let it. The point is not to avoid every blow. The point is to emerge from each one less foolish, less dependent, less ruled by impulse, and more committed to virtue. That is how hardship reveals true character, not by what it takes from you, but by what it forces you to choose. And if you choose well, then nothing in hardship has been wasted. Number 4. Control judgments. Conquer every difficulty. Every difficulty that enters your life arrives in two forms. The first is the event itself. The second is the judgment you make about it. The first often lies beyond your command. The second always waits for your decision. Yet most people reverse these two realities. They spend their strength trying to reshape events while surrendering complete authority over their own judgments. They become exhausted not because life is impossible, but because they have neglected the one place where genuine mastery begins. You have been taught to believe that your peace depends upon favorable conditions. You wait for people to become easier, work to become lighter, uncertainty to disappear, and fortune to become more generous. Each day you postpone tranquility until the world satisfies your expectations. This bargain will never be honored. The world has never promised to arrange itself according to individual preference. If your inner life depends upon that promise, disappointment will become your constant companion. A disciplined life begins when you recognize that no event carries meaning until your judgment assigns it one. Circumstances present facts. Your mind supplies interpretation. Between these two lies the freedom that most people never discover because they rush past it without attention. They see an obstacle and immediately call it failure. They hear criticism and immediately call it humiliation. They experience delay and immediately call it injustice. Their conclusions appear so quickly that they mistake them for reality itself. The thinking mind must become slower than impulse and faster than habit. This is not hesitation born from fear, it is careful examination born from discipline. Every impression that enters your awareness should be treated as a proposal rather than a verdict. Your first reaction is not your wisest guide, it is merely the earliest movement of an untended mind. Wisdom begins when you stop asking whether a thought is emotionally convincing and begin asking whether it deserves your agreement. Observe how often your judgments enlarge ordinary events into unnecessary burdens. A conversation becomes evidence that you are disliked. A temporary setback becomes proof that your future has been ruined. A single mistake becomes a permanent definition of your worth. None of these conclusions are contained within the events themselves. They are added afterward by imagination. You have not been defeated by reality. You have been persuaded by an interpretation that escaped examination. This habit grows stronger every time it is left unchallenged. The mind learns through repetition. If fearful judgments are accepted daily, fear begins speaking with the confidence of long familiarity. If resentment is welcomed each time disappointment appears, resentment gradually disguises itself as justice. If excuses are repeated often enough, they become indistinguishable from personal identity. That is why the greatest battles are fought quietly within thought long before they appear in visible action. You must become a guardian of your own judgments. No one else can perform this work on your behalf. Others may offer advice, encouragement, correction, or warning, but only you can decide which thoughts are permitted to shape your conduct. This responsibility cannot be delegated. The condition of your character depends upon what you repeatedly approve within yourself. Begin each morning by preparing your judgment before engaging with the demands of the day. Sit quietly while the mind is still capable of listening. Ask yourself which qualities deserve protection regardless of external events. Resolve that honesty will survive inconvenience. Resolve that patience will survive interruption. Resolve that fairness will survive disagreement. Resolve that self-command will survive frustration. These commitments establish an inner standard before circumstances begin offering distractions. Throughout the day, practice interrupting automatic conclusions. Whenever emotion becomes intense, resist the urge to declare immediate certainty. Instead, ask yourself exactly what has occurred. Strip away assumptions until only observable facts remain. Then ask whether your current judgment follows necessarily from those facts or whether your imagination has added unnecessary weight. This brief examination often dissolves suffering before it becomes deeply rooted. Consider how often anger begins with a hidden judgment that another person was required to behave according to your expectations. Consider how often anxiety begins with the assumption that uncertain outcomes must become certain before you can remain peaceful. Consider how often envy grows from the belief that another person's success somehow diminishes your own opportunity to live virtuously. None of these judgments withstand careful inspection. They survive only because they are rarely questioned. The disciplined person trains himself to distinguish appearances from truth. Appearances are immediate, emotional, and persuasive. Truth requires patience. Appearances invite reaction. Truth invites investigation. When these are confused, life becomes a series of impulsive responses. When they are separated, reason gradually assumes its proper authority. You may believe that controlling your judgments means suppressing emotion. It does not. Feelings arise naturally. What matters is what follows. Emotion offers information about your present condition, but it does not possess the wisdom required to direct your life. It tells you that something has affected you. It cannot reliably tell you what should be done next. That decision belongs to reason alone. Imagine carrying a vessel filled to its edge. Every uneven movement causes it to spill. This is how many people carry their minds. Every criticism, inconvenience, or disappointment immediately overflows into speech and action. They imagine that emotional intensity excuses careless conduct, yet genuine strength appears when the vessel remains steady despite uneven ground. Stability does not eliminate difficulty. It governs itself while difficulty continues. Another discipline deserves daily practice. Whenever you find yourself complaining, stop and examine the hidden judgment beneath the complaint. Every complaint rests upon an expectation. Ask yourself what expectation has been violated. Then ask whether life ever guaranteed that expectation. Often you will discover that your frustration comes not from reality, but from demanding certainty where only probability exists, permanence where only change exists, or comfort where only duty was promised. Many difficulties lose much of their power when stripped of exaggerated language. Instead of saying everything has gone wrong, describe events precisely. Instead of declaring that nothing ever works, identify the specific obstacle before you. Instead of announcing that you cannot endure, ask whether you have truly reached the limit of your ability or merely the limit of your willingness. Accurate language protects accurate judgment. Dramatic language feeds emotional confusion. Do not underestimate the influence of repeated self-conversation. The words spoken silently within your own mind shape your conduct more consistently than words spoken aloud. If your inner dialogue continually rehearses helplessness, resentment, and fear, your actions will eventually reflect those rehearsals. If your inner dialogue continually returns to responsibility, discipline, and thoughtful examination, your conduct gradually follows the same direction. The mind becomes what it repeatedly practices. A valuable exercise during difficult moments is to delay agreement. When an upsetting impression appears, imagine placing it before a careful judge instead of accepting it immediately. Ask whether the evidence is complete. Ask whether another interpretation is possible. Ask whether the judgment encourages virtue or merely satisfies wounded pride. This habit strengthens clarity because it teaches the mind that first impressions are invitations to examine rather than commands to obey. You must also learn to separate what deserves concern from what merely attracts attention. Modern life constantly demands emotional investment in matters beyond your authority. Endless opinions, distant conflicts, imagined futures, and comparisons compete for your focus. Yet every moment spent emotionally surrendering to what you cannot govern weakens your ability to govern what remains genuinely yours. Attention is one of your greatest resources. Spend it deliberately. Whenever you encounter difficulty, direct your effort toward the quality of your own response, rather than the certainty of external success. You may not secure the outcome you desire. You can still secure honesty within effort. You may not persuade another person. You can still preserve fairness in your speech. You may not remove hardship. You can still refuse to let hardship remove your integrity. These victories remain available under every circumstance because they depend upon judgment rather than fortune. Each evening, conduct an examination free from self-deception. Recall situations that disturbed your peace. Identify the judgments responsible for your disturbance. Ask whether those judgments reflected reality or merely habit. Ask where impatience disguised itself as necessity. Ask where pride disguised itself as justice. Ask where fear disguised itself as wisdom. This review is not an exercise in regret. It is deliberate correction. Every honest observation prepares the mind for wiser conduct tomorrow. Progress rarely announces itself dramatically. More often it appears quietly. One day you notice that criticism no longer governs your mood for hours. Another day you discover that delay no longer provokes immediate irritation. Later you recognize that uncertainty no longer compels frantic attempts to control the future. These changes are not accidents. They are evidence that disciplined judgments have begun replacing automatic reactions. There will still be painful moments. Reason does not eliminate the human condition. Loss remains painful. Failure remains disappointing. Illness remains difficult. What changes is your relationship with these experiences. Instead of becoming captive to them, you meet them with measured judgment. Instead of multiplying suffering through exaggerated interpretation, you preserve your energy for worthy action. Instead of surrendering character during hardship, you strengthen it. Never believe that controlling judgments means controlling every thought that appears. Thoughts often arise without invitation. Mastery begins with what happens next. You decide whether to entertain them, challenge them, or dismiss them. The freedom of the disciplined mind lies not in preventing every impression, but in refusing blind obedience to any impression that has not earned your trust. The greatest conquest available to any person is not domination over events, but authority over judgment. External victories disappear. Wealth changes hands. Recognition fades. Positions of influence pass from one person to another. Yet a mind trained to judge rightly carries its greatest possession everywhere. It cannot be robbed by fortune because its strength does not depend upon fortune. Do not wait until extraordinary hardship arrives before beginning this discipline. Practice during ordinary moments. Examine small irritations before they become large resentments. Correct minor exaggerations before they become permanent habits. Guard simple conversations before they become destructive conflicts. Character is shaped gradually through countless unnoticed choices. The mind trained faithfully in ordinary circumstances becomes dependable when greater trials appear. The quality of your life will never exceed the quality of your judgments. Every decision, relationship, ambition, disappointment, and success passes first through the court of your own mind. If that court is governed by impulse, confusion follows. If it is governed by reason, clarity follows. No circumstance possesses greater authority over your future than the judgments you repeatedly approve today. Carry this understanding into tomorrow. Meet each event without rushing to pronounce it either blessing or disaster. Let reason speak before emotion receives permission to act. Protect your attention from exaggeration. Protect your speech from unnecessary complaint. Protect your character from the temptation to surrender responsibility whenever life becomes difficult. When your judgments remain disciplined, difficulties lose much of their power to disturb you. You may not remove every obstacle placed before you, but you will no longer allow those obstacles to determine the quality of the person you become. That is the only conquest that remains secure under every condition, and it begins with the next judgment you choose to examine instead of blindly believing. Number 5. Endure pain with quiet strength. Pain does not ask for your permission before entering your life. It arrives in forms you never expected, at moments you never prepared for, and with a force that can shake even the most confident person. It may come through the loss of someone you love, the collapse of a long-held plan, the betrayal of trust, the weakening of the body, or the slow burden of responsibilities that seem to grow heavier with each passing day. You cannot arrange your life so perfectly that pain will never find you. Such a life has never existed. The only question worthy of your attention is whether pain will find you unprepared or disciplined. Most people believe they suffer because pain itself is unbearable. Look more carefully. Pain is difficult, but what often overwhelms a person is the story built around it. The body experiences discomfort, yet the mind immediately declares that life has become impossible. A loss occurs, and the mind insists that nothing meaningful can ever exist again. A season of hardship begins, and the imagination rushes ahead, predicting endless misery before the next step has even been taken. The wound is real, but the mind often deepens it by refusing to remain with what is actually present. It abandons the present moment and wanders into fear, resentment, and hopeless prediction. This is where quiet strength begins. Quiet strength is not the absence of pain. It is the refusal to allow pain to dictate the condition of your character. You may feel grief without becoming consumed by despair. You may experience disappointment without surrendering your integrity. You may endure physical discomfort without allowing bitterness to poison your judgment. Your suffering does not remove your responsibility to live according to reason. In fact, it makes that responsibility even more urgent. There is a dangerous habit hidden within every untrained mind. It assumes that pain automatically grants permission to abandon discipline. A difficult day becomes an excuse for harsh words. Fatigue becomes an excuse for dishonesty. Frustration becomes an excuse for impatience. Disappointment becomes an excuse for neglecting duty. The mind quietly whispers that because you have suffered, you deserve to abandon your standards. Listen carefully to that voice. It has destroyed more character than hardship itself ever could. Pain has no authority over your virtue unless you willingly surrender it. It can test your patience, but it cannot steal your patience. It can challenge your courage, but it cannot remove your courage. It can exhaust your body, but it cannot force your judgment into confusion unless you permit confusion to rule. This is the distinction that separates a disciplined life from a reactive one. External suffering reaches the body and circumstances. Inner corruption begins only when your own judgment agrees to it. Many people spend years searching for methods to eliminate discomfort. They organize their lives around avoiding inconvenience, criticism, uncertainty, and emotional struggle. Yet this pursuit creates a fragile mind. The person who has never practiced endurance becomes frightened by the smallest hardship. A delayed reward feels unbearable. A disagreement feels like a crisis. A moment of loneliness feels like abandonment. Comfort, when constantly pursued, quietly weakens the very strength required to meet reality as it truly is. The wiser path is not to worship suffering, nor to seek unnecessary hardship for its own sake. The wiser path is to stop treating discomfort as an enemy that must always be escaped. Instead, recognize it as an opportunity to exercise the qualities that cannot develop without resistance. Patience cannot grow without delay. Courage cannot grow without fear. Self-restraint cannot grow without temptation. Endurance cannot grow without pain. Every virtue requires conditions that challenge it before it becomes stable. When pain enters your day, begin by refusing dramatic language. Notice how quickly the mind exaggerates its own condition. A small setback becomes a disaster. A difficult conversation becomes complete rejection. Temporary exhaustion becomes permanent defeat. Words shape judgment, and judgment shapes conduct. Speak truthfully about your condition without decorating it with despair. Say only what is accurate. This discipline protects the mind from becoming more wounded than circumstances require. Another mistake appears whenever pain becomes deeply personal. The mind begins asking why this happened specifically to you, as though hardship has singled you out unfairly. Yet difficulty belongs to the condition of being human. Every person you admire has carried burdens unseen by others. Every life contains seasons of uncertainty, loss, illness, disappointment, and change. Your suffering is not evidence that life has turned against you. It is evidence that you are participating in the same human condition shared by every generation before you. This realization does not make pain disappear. It removes the unnecessary belief that your hardship is somehow unnatural. Once you stop expecting life to spare you from difficulty, much of your frustration begins to dissolve. You stop negotiating with reality. Instead, your attention returns to the only place where meaningful work can begin, your own response. Each morning, prepare yourself quietly before engaging with the demands of the day. Sit without distraction for a few moments and remind yourself that comfort is uncertain, but character remains available under every condition. Resolve that if inconvenience arrives, you will meet it without complaint. If disappointment arrives, you will continue your duties without resentment. If physical discomfort appears, you will refuse to let it poison your speech or your conduct. These are not promises that pain will disappear. They are commitments that pain will not become your master. Throughout the day, observe your first reaction whenever discomfort appears. Do not attempt to suppress what you feel. Simply notice it before acting upon it. Ask yourself whether your present emotion requires immediate obedience or careful examination. Most impulses demand speed because they fear being questioned. Give yourself a moment of silence before responding. During that pause, your judgment has the opportunity to regain its rightful place. You will notice that pain often demands attention far beyond what is necessary. It constantly invites you to replay the injury, to discuss it repeatedly, to compare it with the lives of others, and to imagine how much easier everything would be if circumstances were different. These invitations appear reasonable, but they gradually consume your attention. The disciplined mind refuses this endless rehearsal. Once the practical duties surrounding the difficulty have been addressed, it returns its focus to present responsibilities instead of endlessly feeding yesterday's wound. There is another practice that strengthens quiet endurance. Separate physical discomfort from emotional resistance. The body may experience fatigue, illness, or strain. That experience deserves appropriate care and practical action. Yet emotional resistance often adds a second burden by insisting that the discomfort should not exist. The mind begins arguing with reality instead of adapting to it. This argument never succeeds. It merely drains strength that could have been used wisely. Whenever pain appears, ask yourself what still remains within your authority. Perhaps you cannot remove the illness today. You can still choose honesty. Perhaps you cannot restore what has been lost. You can still choose fairness. Perhaps you cannot shorten the difficult season. You can still choose patience. Pain narrows many options, but it never eliminates the possibility of acting with virtue. As long as reason remains available, your greatest responsibility remains intact. There will be moments when endurance feels lonely. Others may not understand what you carry. They may underestimate your struggle or misinterpret your silence. Resist the temptation to measure the value of your conduct by whether it receives recognition. Virtue loses none of its worth simply because it goes unnoticed. The disciplined person does not practice self-command for applause. He practices it because governing himself is always the right thing to do. Do not confuse quiet strength with emotional suppression. A disciplined person acknowledges grief honestly. He recognizes disappointment without pretending it is pleasant. He admits fatigue without making fatigue his identity. Quiet strength does not deny feeling. It refuses to become governed by feeling. There is profound dignity in allowing emotions to exist, without allowing them to occupy the highest place within your judgment. Another valuable exercise is voluntary simplicity. From time to time, choose modest comfort even when greater comfort is available. Eat a simple meal. Accept temporary inconvenience without complaint. Complete difficult tasks without seeking constant distraction. These small practices remind the mind that happiness does not depend upon endless satisfaction of desire. They prepare you for seasons when comfort cannot be chosen. A person accustomed to discipline meets unavoidable hardship with greater composure because restraint is already familiar. As evening approaches, examine the day carefully. Ask yourself not whether pain visited you, but how you received it. Did discomfort make you careless with your speech? Did frustration tempt you towards self-pity? Did difficulty expose hidden dependence upon comfort? Did you continue performing your responsibilities despite inner resistance? This nightly examination transforms suffering into instruction. Every painful experience becomes an opportunity to strengthen judgment rather than weaken it. Avoid comparing your suffering with that of others. Comparison serves neither wisdom nor compassion. Every person carries burdens shaped by circumstances invisible to those around them. Instead of asking whose pain is greater, ask whether your own conduct remained worthy despite your pain. That question belongs entirely to you and always deserves an honest answer. There will be days when your progress feels invisible. The hardship remains, the body still aches. The uncertainty continues. Yet beneath the surface, something important is changing. You are becoming slower to complain. You are becoming less dependent upon favorable conditions before acting well. You are learning to preserve kindness while tired, fairness while disappointed, and patience while delayed. These changes rarely attract attention, but they form the deepest foundation of character. Eventually, you will discover that quiet strength possesses remarkable freedom. It cannot guarantee pleasant circumstances, but it prevents unpleasant circumstances from governing your inner life. It allows you to remain dependable when others become unstable. It allows you to continue serving your responsibilities when emotions fluctuate. It allows you to preserve dignity in situations where many surrender theirs without noticing. Never imagine that enduring pain quietly means enduring it passively. If practical action can improve the situation, take that action with determination. Seek proper treatment when illness appears. Correct mistakes that can be corrected. Repair relationships where justice requires effort. Fulfill every reasonable duty available to you. Quiet strength is never inactivity. It is purposeful action guided by reason instead of panic. The world constantly encourages dramatic displays of suffering because dramatic emotion attracts attention. Quiet endurance rarely receives admiration. Yet the person who remains faithful to virtue while carrying hidden burdens possesses a strength far greater than public recognition can measure. Character matures most deeply where no audience exists. When the next difficult season arrives, do not ask how quickly it will end. Ask how faithfully you can live while it continues. Do not measure the day by the amount of comfort it contains. Measure it by the quality of your judgments, your actions, and your willingness to remain governed by reason. Pain may occupy part of your experience, but it need not occupy the center of your identity. The greatest achievement during hardship is not escaping it at the earliest opportunity. The greatest achievement is emerging from it without allowing bitterness, resentment, fear, or self-indulgence to reshape your character. Circumstances may leave marks upon your life, but they need not leave corruption within your soul. Carry this understanding into every challenge that awaits you. Let pain become a reminder to return to discipline rather than abandon it. Let difficulty become an invitation to strengthen patience rather than feed complaint. Let uncertainty become an opportunity to practice trust in reason rather than surrender to fear. Every hardship offers this choice. Every day offers another opportunity to make it wisely. Endure pain with quiet strength, because your character is worth protecting more carefully than your comfort. The body will change, fortune will change, relationships, possessions, and circumstances will all change according to their nature. But a mind that has learned to remain truthful, disciplined, just, and composed while passing through suffering possesses something that no hardship can permanently take away. That quiet strength becomes the foundation upon which every future trial is met, and it remains with you long after the pain itself has passed. Number 6. Turn obstacles into inner progress. The moment an obstacle appears, your mind makes a decision long before your hands take any action. It quietly asks whether this interruption is an excuse to stop or an opportunity to become stronger. Most people never hear this question because they answer it without awareness. They see resistance and immediately call it misfortune. They meet delay and immediately call it failure. They encounter difficulty and immediately believe that life has turned against them. In that instant, the obstacle becomes heavier than it truly is, not because reality has changed, but because judgment has surrendered to discouragement. No life unfolds without resistance. Every path contains uncertainty, disappointment, misunderstanding, fatigue, loss, and moments when progress appears to stop completely. To expect otherwise is to argue with the nature of existence itself. The disciplined mind does not waste energy demanding a smoother road. It asks a more useful question. What quality of character can this obstacle awaken if I meet it correctly? That single question transforms the purpose of difficulty. The obstacle no longer exists merely to block movement. It becomes material for inner construction. The greatest mistake you can make is believing that your development depends on favorable conditions. If peace only exists when life cooperates, then peace will always remain fragile. If discipline survives only during easy seasons, then it is not discipline at all. The measure of your character is discovered precisely where your preferences are denied. Every obstacle reveals whether your principles remain steady when comfort disappears. That revelation is more valuable than temporary success because it shows you the true condition of your soul. Look carefully at how your mind behaves when plans collapse. Perhaps you prepared carefully, acted honestly, and still watched events unfold differently than expected. At that moment, frustration begins whispering that your effort was wasted. Yet effort guided by virtue is never wasted. The external result may not belong to you, but the quality of your conduct always does. If you acted with wisdom, justice, courage, and self-restraint, then you gained something that no failed outcome can erase. You strengthened the one possession that accompanies you into every future challenge, your character. Many people believe progress is measured by visible achievement. They count promotions, possessions, praise, victories, and completed goals. These things may have value, but they are unstable measures because they depend upon countless factors beyond your authority. Inner progress follows a different standard. It asks whether you became more patient when delayed, whether you became more truthful when pressured, whether you became more composed when criticized, whether you became more generous when disappointed. These victories cannot always be seen by others, yet they shape every decision you will make for the rest of your life. Every obstacle invites two forms of labor. One concerns the situation itself, the other concerns your own mind. The first may involve solving a practical problem, correcting an error, adapting to unexpected change, or accepting what cannot be altered. The second requires examining your judgments, restraining your impulses, guarding your speech, and refusing unnecessary complaint. Never neglect the second while pursuing the first. Many people solve external problems while allowing resentment, pride, and bitterness to take deeper root within them. Such victories are incomplete because they improve circumstances while weakening character. Begin each morning by preparing yourself for resistance instead of wishing for uninterrupted comfort. Tell yourself quietly that today's plans may change, people may disappoint you, unexpected demands may arise, and your own patience may be tested. Do not rehearse these possibilities to create anxiety. Rehearse them to remove surprise. When the mind expects life to include obstacles, it stops treating every interruption as a personal injustice. Prepared expectation creates steadiness, where unrealistic hope creates frustration. As the day unfolds, notice the first obstacle that disturbs your plans. It may seem insignificant: a delayed appointment, a misunderstanding, an unexpected expense, a difficult conversation. Resist the urge to classify it immediately as good or bad. Instead, pause and ask yourself which part of this situation belongs to your responsibility. Perhaps you cannot remove the obstacle immediately. You can still govern your attitude toward it. You can still choose careful speech instead of careless reaction. You can still preserve fairness while others lose theirs. Every obstacle leaves room for virtue, even when it leaves little room for convenience. There is remarkable freedom in understanding that obstacles do not possess moral power. They cannot make you dishonest. They cannot force you into resentment. They cannot command impatience. They may present temptation, but temptation is not compulsion. Between what happens and how you respond remains a space that belongs entirely to your reason. Protect that space with vigilance. It is where your freedom lives. The undisciplined mind constantly searches for reasons to postpone its own improvement. It says that growth will begin once life becomes less demanding. It promises to practice patience after stressful circumstances disappear. It plans to cultivate gratitude after success arrives. It intends to develop courage when fear no longer exists. These promises conceal avoidance. Virtue is not practiced after obstacles disappear. It is practiced because obstacles exist. Waiting for easier conditions simply delays the work that could begin today. Consider how often inconvenience exposes hidden attachments. When a simple delay ruins your mood, it reveals attachment to constant efficiency. When criticism overwhelms you, it reveals attachment to approval. When unexpected change creates panic, it reveals attachment to certainty. These discoveries are gifts if you receive them honestly. They reveal exactly where your training must continue. An obstacle that uncovers weakness has already served a valuable purpose. Train yourself to observe frustration before speaking. Most regrettable words are born during the first moments of resistance. The mind feels blocked and immediately seeks relief through complaint, accusation, or blame. Instead, remain silent long enough to examine the impulse. Ask whether your next words will improve the situation or merely express temporary discomfort. Speech guided by examined judgment preserves dignity even during conflict. Speech guided by irritation often creates obstacles greater than the original difficulty. Another practice deserves your daily attention. At the end of every challenge, ask not only whether the obstacle was overcome, but whether you became better while facing it. Did you preserve honesty when deception seemed easier? Did you remain respectful when others behaved carelessly? Did you continue fulfilling your responsibilities despite disappointment? These questions redirect your attention from external success toward internal formation. A difficult day can become a successful day if your character leaves it stronger than it entered. You must also learn to distinguish resistance from impossibility. Many ambitions are abandoned simply because progress became uncomfortable. The mind quickly interprets difficulty as evidence that the path should be abandoned altogether. Yet worthwhile pursuits often demand perseverance beyond initial enthusiasm. Before deciding that something cannot be accomplished, ask whether you have truly reached the limit of reasoned effort or merely encountered ordinary resistance. These are very different conditions. Do not become attached to the speed of your progress. The desire for immediate results often produces unnecessary discouragement. Character grows through repeated choices, not dramatic moments. Every time you respond thoughtfully instead of impulsively, you strengthen yourself. Every time you refuse self-pity, you strengthen yourself. Every time you complete a difficult duty without seeking excuses, you strengthen yourself. These changes accumulate quietly until one day you realize that obstacles which once defeated you no longer possess the same power. There is another danger hidden within success itself. When obstacles are removed too easily, pride often grows unnoticed. The mind begins believing it has become self-sufficient. It forgets the discipline that produced earlier progress. New challenges then arrive, exposing arrogance that comfort had concealed. For this reason, resistance continues serving even those who have matured. It reminds you that growth remains an ongoing responsibility rather than a completed achievement. Practice voluntary challenge whenever circumstances permit. Choose difficult tasks that strengthen your discipline instead of always selecting the easiest option. Complete responsibilities without unnecessary delay. Accept modest inconvenience without complaint. Resist small desires simply to remind yourself that appetite does not rule your life. These practices prepare your character before larger obstacles appear. A mind accustomed to deliberate discipline responds more wisely when unexpected hardship arrives. Throughout the day, return frequently to the distinction between what belongs to you and what does not. Results do not belong entirely to you. Other people's opinions do not belong to you. The actions of strangers do not belong to you. Changing circumstances do not belong to you. What belongs to you is your intention, your judgment, your effort, your integrity, and your willingness to remain faithful to reason. Obstacles become less intimidating when you stop demanding ownership over what was never yours. As evening approaches, conduct a careful examination of the day's resistance. Identify the obstacle that challenged you most. Recall your first reaction without defending it. Was your judgment accurate or exaggerated? Did you preserve composure or surrender to impulse? Did the obstacle reveal impatience, pride, fear, or attachment that had previously escaped your notice? Welcome these discoveries. They point directly toward tomorrow's practice. Do not measure yourself harshly because weaknesses remain. Measure yourself honestly because honesty creates improvement. The purpose of self-examination is correction, not condemnation. A fault clearly recognized can gradually be disciplined. A fault hidden behind excuses quietly governs the entire personality. Therefore, thank every obstacle that reveals something true about your inner condition. It has given you knowledge that comfort would have concealed. Remember that every challenge carries two possible outcomes. It may harden your resentment or strengthen your wisdom. It may deepen your excuses or deepen your discipline. It may increase your dependence upon favorable circumstances or increase your confidence in reason. The obstacle does not decide which outcome becomes reality. Your judgments decide. You are never merely passing through difficulties. Difficulties are always passing through you, shaping whatever part of your character you leave unguarded. If you meet them unconsciously, they leave behind bitterness, fear, and complaint. If you meet them deliberately, they leave behind patience, courage, humility, and endurance. The same event produces different people because each person interprets it differently. When another obstacle appears tomorrow, Resist the familiar temptation to ask why life has become difficult again. Instead, ask what opportunity for virtue has arrived disguised as inconvenience. Ask where patience can be practiced. Ask where courage is required. Ask where justice must guide your actions. Ask where self-restraint deserves protection. In doing so, you stop treating obstacles as interruptions to your life and begin recognizing them as part of the very process through which a disciplined life is formed. A person who learns this lesson no longer waits for perfect conditions before pursuing peace. He understands that every delay can strengthen patience, every criticism can strengthen humility, every disappointment can strengthen resilience, and every uncertainty can strengthen trust in reason. The obstacle remains real, but its purpose changes completely. Instead of becoming a wall that ends your progress, it becomes the very material from which deeper character is built. Carry this understanding with quiet determination. The world will continue presenting resistance because that is the nature of human life. Let each obstacle remind you that your greatest work has never been the rearrangement of circumstances. Your greatest work has always been the careful formation of your own character. When every challenge becomes an opportunity to practice virtue, no difficulty is entirely empty, no setback is entirely wasted, and no obstacle can prevent the one form of progress that matters most, the steady refinement of the soul through disciplined judgment and faithful action. Number 7. Detach from fear of outcomes. The greatest prison is not built from stone, iron, or locked doors. It is built inside the mind whenever your peace becomes dependent upon an outcome you cannot command. The moment you decide that you can only be calm if success arrives, only be content if another person approves of you, only be confident if the future unfolds exactly as you planned, you have surrendered your freedom before life has even begun its work. Your happiness no longer belongs to your own judgment. It has been handed over to chance, to circumstance, and to the choices of people who were never placed under your authority. Look honestly at your own life. How many hours have been lost fearing events that never happened? How many decisions have been weakened because you were more concerned with the result than with the quality of your action? How often have you remained silent when truth should have been spoken because you feared rejection? How often have you abandoned worthwhile effort because success was uncertain? The fear of outcomes has stolen more opportunities than failure itself ever could. It convinces you to retreat before reality has even offered its answer. The untrained mind believes that certainty must come before action. It wants guarantees before commitment, security before courage, praise before effort, and victory before perseverance. Yet life has never operated according to these demands. Every meaningful action requires stepping into uncertainty. The future has always remained beyond complete human control. The only person continually surprised by this truth is the one who keeps pretending otherwise. Your suffering often begins long before any event occurs. It begins when imagination leaves the present moment and starts constructing endless futures. One possibility becomes 10, 10 become 100. The mind rehearses failure so vividly that it mistakes fantasy for reality. The body responds as though the imagined disaster has already happened. Your breathing changes, your attention narrows, your judgment weakens. You begin defending yourself against events that exist nowhere except within your own thoughts. Notice what has happened in that moment. Reality has not wounded you. Anticipation has. The future has not imprisoned you. Your attachment to controlling the future has. This distinction changes everything. Once you recognize that much of your anxiety is created by demanding certainty where certainty cannot exist, you begin reclaiming the authority that has always belonged to you. There is a quiet arrogance hidden inside the desire to control outcomes. It assumes that your plans deserve obedience from the world. It assumes that effort guarantees success, that careful preparation guarantees favorable results, that good intentions guarantee appreciation. These assumptions are comforting, but they are false. You may act wisely and still encounter disappointment. You may work diligently and still experience delay. You may speak honestly and still be misunderstood. None of these possibilities diminish the value of virtue. They simply remind you that external results never belonged entirely to you. The disciplined person does not measure life by what he receives. He measures it by how faithfully he fulfills his own responsibility. If he acts with justice, he has succeeded in justice whether others recognize it or not. If he speaks truthfully, he has succeeded in honesty even if others reject his words. If he performs his duty with integrity, his character has already gained something that no unfavorable outcome can erase. The result may vary according to circumstances. The excellence of the action remains entirely his own. Begin every morning by remembering this distinction before the demands of the day begin speaking more loudly than reason. Sit quietly and remind yourself that your task today is not to command events, but to govern yourself. Tell yourself that meetings may not unfold as expected, conversations may become difficult, opportunities may disappear, and plans may require revision. None of these possibilities determine whether you can remain disciplined, truthful, patient, and fair. Those decisions remain yours regardless of what the day brings. Carry this preparation into your daily work. Before beginning any important task, ask yourself one simple question: what part of this belongs entirely to me? Your effort belongs to you. Your attention belongs to you. Your honesty belongs to you. Your willingness to improve belongs to you. The final outcome does not. Once this distinction becomes clear, much unnecessary fear begins dissolving. You no longer burden yourself with responsibilities that reality never assigned to you. Many people confuse detachment with indifference. They imagine that releasing attachment to outcomes means abandoning ambition or refusing to care about results. This misunderstands disciplined living completely. You should care deeply about acting well. You should prepare carefully, work diligently, and pursue worthy goals with complete commitment. What you must release is the belief that your peace depends upon obtaining a particular result. Commitment to excellence and attachment to success are not the same thing. One strengthens the soul, the other enslaves it. Observe what happens when your attention becomes fixed entirely upon future results. The present moment loses its value. Instead of performing today's duty carefully, you become consumed with tomorrow's possibility. Instead of listening during a conversation, you calculate how the conversation might end. Instead of giving your full effort to today's work, you obsess over recognition that may or may not arrive months later. Your mind abandons the only place where action is possible and wanders into territory where action is impossible. Return your attention gently but firmly to the present responsibility. Ask yourself, what can be done wisely now? Not next month, not after everyone approves, not after every uncertainty disappears. Right now, the disciplined mind remains anchored where choice actually exists. Every moment spent worrying about uncontrollable outcomes is a moment stolen from the only action capable of influencing anything at all. There is another hidden cost to fearing outcomes. Fear quietly reshapes your character. It encourages compromise. It persuades you to abandon honesty in exchange for acceptance. It tempts you to avoid difficult conversations because harmony appears safer than truth. It convinces you to lower your standards because failure seems too painful to risk. Gradually, without noticing, you begin serving fear instead of reason. Your decisions no longer arise from what is right. They arise from what appears safest. This is why courage cannot exist without uncertainty. If every outcome were guaranteed, courage would be unnecessary. Courage becomes visible precisely because the future remains unknown. Every time you choose virtue despite uncertainty, you strengthen the governing part of your soul. Every time you allow fear of results to dictate your conduct, you weaken it. Practice another discipline throughout the day. Whenever you notice anxiety increasing, pause before continuing. Ask yourself exactly what outcome you are trying to secure. Then ask whether that outcome truly belongs to your authority. If the answer is no, release your claim upon it. Redirect your attention toward the quality of your own action. This simple movement of the mind may need repeating many times each day. Do not become discouraged by repetition. Character is formed through repeated correction, not instant perfection. The desire for complete control often disguises itself as responsibility. You begin believing that if you worry enough, think enough, predict enough, or prepare enough, you can eliminate uncertainty altogether. Yet excessive worry is not responsibility. It is misplaced effort. True responsibility fulfills present duties with excellence, while accepting that many consequences remain beyond personal command. The disciplined person prepares thoroughly but refuses to confuse preparation with control. There will be moments when the outcome you hoped for does not arrive. A door closes despite your best effort. A relationship changes despite your sincerity. A long-awaited opportunity passes to someone else. During such moments, your first temptation will be to believe that everything has been lost. Resist that conclusion. Ask instead what remains untouched. Your integrity remains, your ability to learn remains, your capacity for courage remains, your opportunity to respond wisely remains. These are not small possessions. They are the foundation of every meaningful life. Do not measure yourself by victories that fortune distributes unevenly. Measure yourself by the consistency of your judgments. Ask whether you remained just when disappointed. Ask whether you preserved patience while waiting. Ask whether you continued working diligently despite uncertainty. These questions cannot be answered by luck. They can only be answered by your own conduct. Each evening, before the day is finished, examine where attachment to outcomes influenced your thinking. Did fear prevent necessary action? Did hope for approval distort your honesty? Did disappointment tempt you toward bitterness? Do not condemn yourself for these discoveries. Welcome them. Every attachment clearly recognized becomes another place where freedom can begin. There is tremendous peace in accepting that your task is smaller than you once imagined. You are not responsible for arranging the entire future. You are responsible for governing your own reason within the present moment. You are not responsible for forcing success from every effort. You are responsible for ensuring that every effort reflects virtue. You are not responsible for making every person understand you. You are responsible for speaking with honesty and fairness. As this understanding deepens, you will notice subtle changes within yourself. Decisions become clearer because they are no longer clouded by constant prediction. Conversations become more sincere because they are no longer controlled by the desire for approval. Work becomes more satisfying because excellence replaces anxiety as the measure of success. Even disappointment loses much of its power because your deepest reward no longer depends upon external achievement. You will still hope for favorable outcomes. That is natural. You may prefer health over illness, success over failure, friendship over conflict, and abundance over scarcity. Preference itself is not the problem. Bondage begins only when preference becomes necessity, when you convince yourself that life cannot remain good unless reality obeys your desires. The disciplined mind allows preferences to exist without allowing them to become masters. Freedom grows whenever you stop negotiating with uncertainty. The future has always belonged to causes beyond your complete understanding. Accept this without resentment. Then return to what has always been yours: your judgments, your intentions, your speech, your actions, and your willingness to remain faithful to reason regardless of what tomorrow brings. When fear of outcomes no longer governs you, an extraordinary transformation begins. You become willing to attempt difficult things because failure no longer threatens your identity. You become willing to tell the truth because approval no longer determines your worth. You become willing to serve others without demanding gratitude in return. You become willing to persevere because the value of your effort is no longer measured only by visible success. Carry this discipline into every part of your life. Let uncertainty remind you to strengthen trust in reason rather than dependence upon prediction. Let every unknown future become another opportunity to practice courage instead of anxiety. Let every delayed result become another invitation to deepen patience. In time, you will discover that the greatest victory was never controlling outcomes. The greatest victory was freeing your character from needing to control them. Once your peace rests upon the quality of your own judgments rather than the uncertainty of external results, no changing circumstance can easily steal it, because its foundation no longer lies in the future. It lies within the disciplined soul you are choosing to build today. Number 8. Choose virtue above comfort always. Most people do not lose themselves through great acts of corruption. They lose themselves through small decisions made in favor of comfort. One avoided conversation because honesty felt difficult. One postponed responsibility because rest seemed more appealing. One compromised with conscience because approval appeared more valuable than truth. These choices seem insignificant when viewed alone, yet together they shape an entire life. Character is not destroyed in a single moment. It is surrendered one comfortable excuse at a time. The mind naturally seeks what feels pleasant. It avoids effort, uncertainty, criticism, sacrifice, and discomfort. Left untrained, it begins believing that comfort is the highest good, and that anything threatening comfort must be avoided. From that false belief comes nearly every form of inner weakness. A person abandons discipline because it demands effort. He abandons justice because fairness requires sacrifice. He abandons courage because fear promises temporary safety. He abandons honesty because deception appears easier. The search for comfort quietly replaces the pursuit of virtue, and the soul becomes divided against itself. Look carefully at the decisions that trouble your conscience. They are rarely caused by ignorance. More often they arise because you already knew what was right, but another path seemed easier. You understood that patience was required, yet anger promised immediate relief. You knew that self-restraint was necessary, yet desire insisted that satisfaction could not wait. You recognized that responsibility belonged to you, yet excuses offered a softer place to stand. Your greatest struggle has never been discovering what virtue requires. It has been choosing it when comfort argues more loudly. This is why discipline must become stronger than preference. If your actions depend upon what feels pleasant in the moment, your principles will change whenever circumstances change. One difficult day will become permission to neglect your duties. One unpleasant conversation will become justification for dishonesty. One disappointment will become an excuse to abandon perseverance. A stable life cannot be built upon unstable feelings. It must be built upon steady judgment. There is profound freedom in recognizing that comfort is not the purpose of your existence. Comfort has its place, but it cannot become your master. The body naturally prefers ease, yet the governing part of your mind was not given to serve every passing desire. It was given to examine desires before accepting them. Every appetite must appear before reason and ask permission. Every impulse must be tested before becoming action. This is the beginning of self-governance. Notice how often your day is directed by the question, "What do I feel like doing?" Replace that question with another. What does virtue require of me now? The difference between these questions determines the direction of an entire life. Feelings change from hour to hour. Virtue remains constant. Feelings often seek immediate satisfaction. Virtue seeks lasting integrity. Feelings ask what is easiest. Virtue asks what is right. Do not imagine that choosing virtue means eliminating all enjoyment from life. The disciplined life is not a rejection of happiness, it is a rejection of slavery to pleasure. There is a great difference between appreciating comfort and depending upon it. You may enjoy success without believing success defines your worth. You may appreciate rest without allowing laziness to govern your habits. You may welcome praise without making praise the reason for your conduct. Freedom begins when enjoyment no longer becomes necessity. Each morning, before the demands of the day begin, prepare your judgment. Remind yourself that opportunities to choose comfort over virtue will certainly appear. Someone may provoke your temper. Fatigue may tempt you toward carelessness. Convenience may invite compromise. Resolve beforehand that no temporary relief will persuade you to betray your principles. A decision made calmly before temptation arrives possesses greater strength than one made while desire is already speaking. As you move through the day, pay close attention to moments of resistance. Whenever you notice yourself delaying a necessary responsibility, stop and examine the reason. Is the task truly impossible, or is it simply uncomfortable? Whenever you hesitate to speak honestly, ask whether silence protects wisdom or merely protects convenience. Whenever you seek distraction, ask whether you are resting wisely or escaping duty. Honest questions expose hidden motives that excuses try to conceal. One of the greatest dangers is believing that small compromises carry no lasting consequence. Character does not recognize such divisions. Every action teaches the mind what kind of person you are becoming. When you repeatedly surrender to convenience, your will gradually weakens. The next compromise becomes easier than the last. Eventually, what once disturbed your conscience begins feeling normal. Not because it has become right, but because repeated indulgence has silenced your sensitivity to it. The disciplined person protects that inner sensitivity carefully. He refuses to allow repeated comfort to dull his awareness of what is honorable. He understands that every unnecessary excuse weakens future resolve. Therefore, he practices choosing what is right even when no one else notices. Private victories shape public conduct. The habits formed in solitude eventually appear in every relationship, every responsibility, and every decision. There is another illusion that deserves careful examination. Many people believe they will become virtuous after achieving easier circumstances. They promise themselves that greater discipline will begin once work becomes less demanding, once finances improve, once relationships become simpler, or once stress disappears. Yet comfort rarely creates stronger character. More often, it reveals whether discipline already existed. The proper time to practice virtue has always been the present moment, regardless of external conditions. Train yourself to welcome ordinary opportunities for self-command. Complete difficult responsibilities before seeking entertainment. Listen patiently when interruption feels easier. Admit mistakes quickly instead of defending pride. Finish what reason has judged necessary even when enthusiasm has faded. These actions appear ordinary, yet they steadily strengthen the governing part of your soul. Great character is built from repeated faithfulness in small choices. There will be moments when virtue demands sacrifice. Honesty may cost approval. Justice may cost advantage. Courage may require standing alone. Moderation may require refusing desires that everyone around you celebrates. During these moments, remember what is truly being weighed. You are not merely choosing between comfort and discomfort. You are choosing between preserving your character and weakening it. Temporary pleasure passes quickly. The condition of your soul remains long after the pleasant feeling disappears. Practice speaking less during moments of strong desire. Impulse becomes persuasive when expressed immediately. Silence gives reason time to examine what appetite demands. Within that brief pause, ask whether satisfying this desire strengthens or weakens your character. Ask whether your future self will respect the decision you are about to make. Many harmful choices lose their attraction when examined patiently instead of obeyed instantly. Another valuable discipline is voluntary simplicity. Periodically choose the less comfortable path when no necessity requires it. Walk instead of seeking constant convenience. Accept modest meals without complaint. Complete difficult work without searching for unnecessary relief. These practices are not punishments. They remind your mind that contentment does not depend upon luxury. They teach that you remain capable of living well even when comfort is absent. A person who has learned this cannot easily be controlled by changing circumstances. Observe how attachment to comfort influences relationships. Sometimes you avoid necessary correction because conflict feels unpleasant. Sometimes you withhold kindness because resentment feels easier. Sometimes you expect others to remove every inconvenience from your life instead of governing your own reactions. These habits quietly weaken both character and community. Virtue often asks you to endure temporary discomfort so that truth, justice, and goodwill may endure much longer. As evening approaches, examine your conduct with complete honesty. Ask yourself where comfort quietly defeated principle. Did convenience persuade you to delay your responsibilities? Did fear persuade you to conceal the truth? Did pleasure persuade you to neglect moderation? Do not invent excuses. Do not soften the facts. Simply observe them clearly. Then ask how tomorrow's choices can better reflect the person reason calls you to become. Never confuse harshness with discipline. Choosing virtue above comfort does not require becoming cold toward yourself or others. Firmness guided by wisdom differs greatly from unnecessary severity. Care for the body appropriately. Rest when reason judges rest necessary. Accept legitimate enjoyment with gratitude. The danger lies not in comfort itself, but in allowing comfort to decide your conduct. Reason must remain the ruler. Everything else must remain its servant. You will discover that every act of self-command increases your freedom. The desire that once controlled you gradually loses its authority. The fear that once dictated your decisions begins fading. The laziness that once delayed your duties weakens each time you refuse its invitation. This freedom cannot be purchased or given by another person. It is earned through countless quiet victories over your own impulses. Do not seek admiration for this work. Many people celebrate visible success while overlooking invisible discipline. That should not trouble you. The purpose of choosing virtue is not recognition. The purpose is to preserve the integrity of your own soul. A clear conscience provides a deeper satisfaction than applause ever can. Praise depends upon other people. Character depends upon you. When circumstances become difficult, the temptation to choose comfort grows stronger. Fatigue argues that discipline can wait. Frustration argues that fairness no longer matters. Fear argues that courage is unreasonable. During these moments, remember that virtue possesses its greatest value precisely when it costs something. Patience practiced only during peaceful days remains untested. Courage displayed only when nothing is at risk remains incomplete. Justice maintained only when convenient has never truly become part of your character. Carry this understanding into tomorrow. Let every temptation become an opportunity to strengthen self-command rather than weaken it. Let every difficult duty remind you that excellence is formed through faithful action instead of comfortable intention. Let every sacrifice made for truth deepen your respect for the person you are becoming. You cannot always choose pleasant circumstances, but you can always choose the quality of your response. A life devoted to comfort grows increasingly dependent upon favorable conditions. A life devoted to virtue grows increasingly independent of them. One becomes anxious whenever ease disappears. The other remains steady because its foundation was never built upon ease in the first place. Choose the path that strengthens what no changing circumstance can take away. Choose the path that preserves honesty above convenience, courage above safety, justice above advantage, and self-restraint above temporary pleasure. In making that choice repeatedly, day after day, you build a character that remains firm whether fortune smiles or turns away, because its deepest loyalty has never belonged to comfort. It has always belonged to virtue. Number 9. Face every trial with courage. Every trial places a question before you long before it demands an answer from your actions. The question is not whether the trial is fair, whether it arrived too soon, or whether someone else caused it. The question is far more personal. Will you allow this moment to govern your character, or will your character govern this moment? Everything that follows depends upon how honestly you answer that single question. The difficulty itself cannot choose your response. Only your judgment possesses that authority. Many people misunderstand courage because they associate it only with extraordinary acts performed under dramatic circumstances. They imagine courage belongs only to those who face great dangers, public challenges, or remarkable sacrifices. Yet the greater part of life is not lived in extraordinary moments. It is lived through ordinary decisions repeated every day. Courage appears when you speak the truth, even though silence would protect your comfort. Courage appears when you continue your responsibilities despite disappointment. Courage appears when you admit your mistakes instead of defending your pride. Courage appears whenever reason asks you to move forward, while fear asks you to retreat. Fear is not your greatest enemy. An unquestioned fear is. Every human being experiences hesitation when confronted with uncertainty, loss, rejection, pain, or failure. The appearance of fear does not diminish your character. The surrender of judgment to fear does. When fear becomes the voice directing your choices, your life slowly begins revolving around avoidance instead of purpose. You stop asking what is right and begin asking only what feels safe. In doing so, you exchange freedom for temporary relief. Look carefully at the moments you regret most deeply. They are often not the times when you failed despite sincere effort. They are the times when fear persuaded you not to act at all. You delayed a necessary conversation because you feared conflict. You ignored an opportunity because you feared failure. You remained attached to unhealthy habits because change appeared uncertain. You accepted a lesser version of yourself because growth required discomfort. These moments reveal that fear becomes most destructive not when it causes pain, but when it prevents virtue. A disciplined mind does not wait for fear to disappear before acting. It understands that courage is demonstrated precisely because fear remains present. If certainty always existed, courage would have no purpose. The value of courageous action lies in choosing reason while uncertainty still surrounds you. The future remains unknown, yet your principles remain clear. That is enough. The first discipline is learning to examine fear before obeying it. Whenever hesitation appears, pause instead of reacting automatically. Ask yourself, what exactly you believe will happen. Separate facts from imagination with complete honesty. Often you will discover that your mind has combined possibility with certainty. A conversation might become uncomfortable, yet your imagination has already declared it disastrous. An effort might fail, yet your thoughts have transformed uncertainty into inevitable defeat. Fear grows stronger whenever assumptions remain unexamined. Bring every fearful judgment before reason. Ask whether the feared outcome truly belongs to your authority. Ask whether avoiding the challenge would preserve your character or merely postpone discomfort. Ask whether the person you hope to become would respect the decision fear is encouraging you to make. These questions interrupt the automatic rule of impulse and restore leadership to your rational mind. Each morning, prepare yourself for moments that will require quiet courage. Tell yourself that today you may be misunderstood, criticized, delayed, disappointed, or confronted with unexpected difficulty. Resolve now that none of these experiences will persuade you to abandon integrity. You cannot determine whether trials will appear, but you can determine the principles with which you intend to meet them. Preparation strengthens resolve before emotion attempts to weaken it. Throughout the day, practice facing small acts of discomfort willingly. Speak honestly when concealment would be easier. Complete difficult responsibilities before seeking recreation. Accept correction without becoming defensive. Resist the urge to escape every unpleasant feeling through distraction. These ordinary disciplines train the soul for greater challenges. A person who continually avoids minor difficulties rarely possesses the strength required for major ones. Courage develops gradually through repeated obedience to reason. One of the greatest obstacles to courage is attachment to approval. The desire to be accepted often persuades you to betray your own judgment. You remain silent when truth should be spoken because you fear losing admiration. You imitate opinions you do not believe because disagreement feels lonely. You shape your conduct according to the expectations of others instead of the demands of virtue. In seeking acceptance, you gradually lose possession of yourself. Remember that another person's opinion belongs to that person, not to you. You cannot command admiration, agreement, or understanding. You can only command the honesty and fairness with which you conduct yourself. Once this distinction becomes clear, much unnecessary fear begins losing its authority. You stop trying to govern what was never yours and return your attention to what has always remained within your responsibility. There will be trials that cannot be solved immediately. Illness may require patience. Loss may require endurance. Uncertainty may continue longer than expected. During such seasons, courage does not always look like decisive action. Sometimes courage consists of remaining faithful to daily duties without surrendering to despair. Sometimes courage is simply rising each morning, determined to govern yourself well, despite circumstances that remain unresolved. Quiet perseverance often reveals greater strength than dramatic achievement. Avoid measuring courage by visible success. A courageous action may still produce disappointment. You may tell the truth and be rejected. You may fulfill your duty and receive criticism. You may act justly and still experience loss. External results do not determine whether courage was present. Courage is measured by the willingness to obey reason regardless of consequence. That willingness remains entirely within your authority. Notice how fear constantly attempts to persuade you that one difficult moment defines your entire future. A single setback becomes proof that success is impossible. One rejection becomes evidence that you are unworthy. One mistake becomes a permanent identity. This is the language of an undisciplined imagination. Reality rarely speaks so absolutely. Every present challenge is only one moment among many. Refuse to allow temporary conditions to become permanent conclusions. Practice returning your attention to the immediate duty before you. When trials seem overwhelming, the mind often becomes consumed with everything that may happen next. Instead, ask what virtue requires during this very moment. Perhaps justice requires a truthful conversation. Perhaps courage requires taking the next small step despite uncertainty. Perhaps moderation requires refusing an unhealthy escape. Perhaps wisdom requires patient observation instead of impulsive reaction. Great burdens become manageable when divided into present responsibilities. Each evening, examine where fear influenced your conduct. Do not search for excuses or condemn yourself harshly. Simply observe with honesty. Where did fear persuade you to remain silent? Where did it encourage delay? Where did it tempt you toward compromise? Then ask how reason could guide those same moments differently tomorrow. Daily examination transforms mistakes into instruction instead of allowing them to become repeated habits. There is another form of courage that often goes unnoticed. It is the courage to confront yourself without deception. Many people can endure criticism from others more easily than honest examination of their own faults. They defend habits that weaken them because admitting the truth appears too painful. Yet genuine progress begins only when excuses end. Looking directly at your own character without denial requires remarkable strength, and it produces freedom that self-deception can never provide. Do not become discouraged because courage must be practiced repeatedly. Every trial presents a new opportunity to strengthen it. Character does not reach a point where further discipline becomes unnecessary. As long as life continues presenting uncertainty, the work of governing yourself continues as well. Accept this responsibility willingly. It is not a burden placed upon you unfairly. It is the natural work of becoming fully responsible for your own soul. You will discover that courage gradually changes your relationship with difficulty itself. Challenges no longer appear only as threats. They become opportunities to confirm the principles you claim to value. Patience becomes visible only when waiting is required. Integrity becomes visible only when compromise becomes tempting. Courage becomes visible only when fear stands nearby. Without trials, these qualities remain ideas. Through trials, they become living habits. Do not seek danger for its own sake. Wisdom never demands reckless behavior. The purpose is not to create unnecessary hardship, but to refuse unnecessary avoidance. Meet the responsibilities already placed before you with steady resolve. Face the conversations you have postponed. Correct the habits you know are weakening you. Accept the duties already entrusted to your care. There is enough opportunity for courage within ordinary life, without inventing additional challenges. When you feel overwhelmed, remember that you are never required to control the entire future. You are asked only to govern your present judgment. Fear constantly pulls your attention toward imagined possibilities beyond your reach. Reason brings you back to the action available now. One truthful sentence, one disciplined decision, one responsible action, one patient response. Courage grows through these simple acts, repeated consistently. As your trust in reason deepens, fear gradually loses its ability to command you. It may continue appearing, but it no longer occupies the highest place within your mind. You begin recognizing it as one impression among many, rather than the ruler of your decisions. This change does not happen through wishful thinking. It happens because you repeatedly prove to yourself that your principles deserve greater loyalty than your anxieties. Carry this understanding into every trial that awaits you. Do not ask whether life will become easier. Ask whether your judgment will become steadier. Do not ask whether fear will disappear completely. Ask whether your commitment to virtue will become stronger than fear. Do not ask whether tomorrow will contain fewer difficulties. Ask whether you will meet tomorrow's difficulties with greater wisdom than you possessed today. Every trial offers you an opportunity that comfort never can. It gives you the chance to discover whether your principles remain alive when circumstances become demanding. If you continue choosing reason over panic, duty over avoidance, truth over convenience, and virtue over fear, no trial can leave you spiritually poorer than it found you. Some may take possessions, opportunities, health, or recognition, but none can take the character you refuse to surrender. That is why courage remains one of the greatest expressions of inner freedom. It reminds you that while circumstances may challenge your life, they never possess the authority to command your soul unless you willingly place it in their hands. Number 10. Live according to nature daily. You cannot live according to nature if you first refuse to see what your own nature actually is. Most people move through life reacting instead of observing, chasing instead of understanding, judging instead of examining. They speak about life as if it is something outside of them, something that constantly acts upon them, while ignoring the fact that their own judgments are what give every event its meaning. In this confusion, they lose alignment with nature not because the world is disordered, but because their own mind is ungoverned. To live according to nature is not to imitate the external world blindly, nor to surrender to every impulse that arises within you. It is to understand what you are, what role you occupy in the larger order of existence, and what is within your control to perform well. You are not given authority over outcomes, other people, or the unfolding of events. You are given authority over your own judgment, intention, and action. When you forget this boundary, life becomes a constant struggle against things that were never placed under your command. Most suffering begins when you demand from life what it was never designed to give. You expect permanence where only change exists. You expect certainty where only uncertainty operates. You expect others to behave according to your standards while neglecting your own discipline. You expect comfort without resistance, success without difficulty, approval without disagreement. These expectations are not reflections of nature. They are distortions created by an undisciplined mind, trying to bend reality to personal preference. Observe how often your mind resists what is already happening. A delay appears, and you call it injustice. A disagreement arises, and you call it hostility. A change of plan occurs, and you call it misfortune. Yet nature does not operate according to your personal preferences. It operates through constant adjustment, movement, and transformation. What you call disruption is often simply life continuing its natural pattern without consulting your desires. To live in alignment with nature is to stop interpreting every inconvenience as personal opposition. It is to recognize that change is not an exception, but the structure of existence itself. Your task is not to eliminate change, but to meet it with reason. When you resist what is inevitable, you multiply your own suffering. When you understand what cannot be altered, you redirect your strength toward what can still be governed, your judgment and your action. Each morning offers a choice between alignment and resistance. You can begin the day expecting reality to obey your preferences, or you can begin by accepting that your role is to respond wisely to whatever appears. One approach creates constant frustration, the other creates steady clarity. Before you engage with the world, remind yourself that you will encounter situations that do not match your expectations. This is not a prediction of failure, it is a correction of unrealistic expectation. Living according to nature also means recognizing your place among other human beings. You are not isolated from the community of rational beings. You are part of a larger system of cooperation, obligation, and shared existence. Your actions inevitably affect others, just as their actions affect you. When you act selfishly without regard for justice, you break alignment with the social nature you are part of. When you act with fairness, patience, and consideration, you participate correctly in the structure of human life. Much of your inner conflict comes from forgetting this interconnected nature. You treat relationships as arenas for personal advantage rather than opportunities for mutual responsibility. You demand understanding from others while withholding it from them. You expect patience while practicing impatience. You want respect without offering respect. This imbalance creates unnecessary friction. Alignment with nature requires consistency between what you expect and what you practice. There is another dimension of living according to nature that is often ignored. It concerns your own rational capacity. Human nature is not defined by impulse alone. It is defined by the ability to reflect, to question, to examine impressions, and to choose action deliberately rather than reactively. When you allow impulse to govern behavior without examination, you abandon the very faculty that distinguishes you from unthinking reaction. You fall below your own nature. Every unexamined judgment is a departure from reason. Every automatic reaction is a step away from alignment. Every moment of awareness that is followed by deliberate choice is a return to nature. The discipline is not to eliminate emotion or sensation, but to ensure that reason remains the guiding principle behind every response. Emotion may appear, impulse may arise, but neither should be allowed to govern action without scrutiny. When difficulty appears, your first instinct may be to label it as wrong or unfair. That label itself is a judgment, not a fact. Nature does not assign moral categories to events in the way your mind does. A storm, a delay, a loss, or a disagreement is simply an occurrence within the larger unfolding of existence. Whether it becomes a source of suffering or a source of growth depends entirely on your interpretation. The event is neutral until your judgment gives it emotional weight. Begin practicing the discipline of separating events from interpretations. When something happens, pause before assigning meaning. Ask what is actually present in the situation before adding assumptions. This pause interrupts the automatic tendency to distort reality according to preference. It restores clarity where emotional reaction often creates confusion. Your daily actions should reflect a constant return to what is reasonable rather than what is comfortable. There will always be a pull toward ease, avoidance, and immediate relief. Nature does not require you to follow these impulses. It requires you to use judgment to determine what is appropriate. Sometimes the appropriate action is difficult. Sometimes it requires restraint rather than indulgence. Sometimes it demands silence rather than speech. Sometimes it demands effort rather than rest. Alignment with nature does not mean choosing what feels easiest. It means choosing what is fitting for the situation. Many people misunderstand nature as something external that must be observed, rather than something internal that must be governed. They study the world but neglect the mind interpreting the world, yet your experience of nature is always filtered through judgment. If judgment is distorted, reality appears distorted. If judgment is clear, reality becomes intelligible even in difficulty. Each evening, you should examine not only what happened during the day, but how you interpreted what happened. Where did you resist what was simply natural change? Where did you exaggerate inconvenience into injustice? Where did you confuse preference with necessity? These reflections are not exercises in guilt. They are corrections of perception. The goal is not emotional punishment, but alignment of thought with reality. Living according to nature requires accepting limits without resentment. You are not limitless. Your control is confined to your own mind and actions. Your influence over outcomes is partial at best. Your understanding is always incomplete. When you accept these truths without resistance, you stop fighting against reality itself. Instead of wasting energy demanding what cannot be given, you begin using energy where it actually has effect. There is a deep calm that emerges when you stop insisting that life conform to your expectations. This calm is not passive, it is active clarity. It allows you to respond to events without internal disturbance. It does not eliminate difficulty, but it removes unnecessary suffering caused by resistance to what is already present. When you act in accordance with reason, you are already aligned with nature. When you act against reason, you are in conflict with it. This is the only true measure, not success or failure, not comfort or discomfort, not approval or rejection. The only meaningful distinction is whether your judgment is guided by clarity or by impulse. As you move through life, practice returning repeatedly to this center. When emotions intensify, return to judgment. When plans collapse, return to action within your control. When uncertainty appears, return to present responsibility. This continuous return is what creates stability. Not control over the world, but control over the mind interpreting the world. You will notice over time that much of what once disturbed you loses its power. Not because life becomes easier, but because your interpretation becomes more disciplined. Events remain the same, but their impact changes because your judgments have changed. This is the essence of living according to nature. It is not an external transformation, it is an internal correction. Continue refining this practice daily. Observe where resistance still exists. Observe where judgment still exaggerates difficulty. Observe where impulse still overrides reason. Then correct without delay. Do not wait for perfect conditions to begin. Nature does not wait for permission to unfold. You do not need permission to align with it. When you live in this way, you no longer experience life as something that must be constantly controlled. You experience it as something to be understood and responded to wisely. Your attention shifts from demanding outcomes to shaping your character, from resisting events to interpreting them clearly, from reacting blindly to acting deliberately. This is what it means to live according to nature. Not escape from difficulty, but proper engagement with it. Not denial of change, but acceptance of it. Not submission to impulse, but governance of reason. When you remain faithful to this discipline, you are no longer at odds with life. You are participating in it with clarity, steadiness, and an unbroken commitment to the only part of existence that has always belonged fully to you, the disciplined use of your own mind.